And we're here with Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. We are well into this season at this point. It's still technically kind of the beginning. What is it?
Yeah,
For the Bruins, it's 4 games
it's
in.
been 4 games. Yeah,
4 games. The Kraken just played their home opener on, what was it,
Kraken,
Thursday?
Kraken have
No,
played
Saturday night.
Kraken have played like 28 games at this point.
All on the road.
Yes,
All on the road. Lost the home opener. Lit first goal. I'll give him that. Place went bananas. Cool arena. I'll give him that. But not the greatest product on the ice.
not riveting. No, it's not particularly. It's I guess when you build a whole team based on like your goaltending and like defense, doesn't really create especially if you're like a casual hockey fan, it doesn't really create like a riveting and product on the ice. That's for sure.
No, and even like they were introducing the forwards, and I was kind of like, oh, the most notable is like Jaden Schwartz or
Mm,
Jordan Eberle, and I'm like, well, that's not going to be the greatest draw for fans that I
no.
could think of. But anyways, your Boston Bruins won 2 games over the weekend, beating the Sabres Friday night, and then beating the Sharks on Sunday afternoon. Two weird times for games, very weird times. Not something that is normal at all. Jack Edwards said on Sunday, I don't even know what day it is.
Yes.
So that was I heard that as like tweet.
Yeah.
That's an easy tweet. And then that out of context Bruins account saw it and was like, should I make an out of context Jack Edwards? And I was like, how have you not already made an out
Absolutely.
of context Jack Edwards account? Are you kidding me? Like I feel like that'd be more easy to do than an out of context Bruins Twitter account in some ways.
I mean, like the content you would get would be pretty consistent over the course of a season. Just listening to the broadcast. So
there's so much. Think about it. Jack Edwards talks for almost 2 hours, like 3 times a week. You're gonna find so much if you just listen in that time that you could tweet. So hopefully they do that. I hope they do because I think there's a lot of content there to mine. However, there was one consistent in the beginning of this Bruins season that I keep looking at, and it always, not that it surprises me, but when you look at like the numbers, if you look at the actual stats, big stat geeks, you realize how good Brad Marchand is. Like, obviously, we see him, right? Like, the plays he makes, the plays he creates. There were even some on Sunday against the Sharks that he, made some magnificent puck play, and nothing came of it. But it was still just like, whoa, like that was something. And we always say, is he the top left winger in the game? And I think it's safe to say we probably both think he is. Artemi Panarin's up there as well. Some say Kucherov. Got to play the regular season there, buddy, to be considered in that regard.
great value in terms of what he brings in terms of cap relief in the playoffs. No one could beat that, but
No, you can't beat that. Marchand's close though with his contract, but we always say he's top left winger, but we sometimes leave out, what is he in the game? Like, consider everybody. Now he has 7 points in 4 games this season, very good. But I was looking at stats, and since 2019-20 until now, he's tied for third with Nathan MacKinnon in the NHL in points. Above him is only Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And I feel like that's something we don't consider enough, because that doesn't just put him in the top of the left winger category. That's top of the league. Like, is he a top 5 player in the NHL?
I mean, if he's not, he's like, it's not like he's clearly, I think, a top 10 player.
Yes.
And if
yes.
he's above that, I don't think he's like 9 or 8. Like he's like 6, 7. Like he's like a tier below that in terms of, there's obviously the McDavid, there's guys like that, but in terms of what he brings, and as you said, there's Panarin, Ovechkin is the best, maybe pure goal scorer, but in terms of everything that he brings to the table, it's not like he's like a guy that offensively, he's so good. He can play power play, PK, transition games, great. And he's also like a point per game guy. Like, no, over a full span of a season, like if it wasn't for, COVID, he very well could be in the running for pulling off 3 straight 100-point seasons. I mean, he was on pace last year. So, I mean, the fact that, it's not that he's just such a complete player. He's also elite in so many areas. I mean, there's very few guys, I think, that you notice him on every single shift. Like there's the McDavids where every time he's out there, you're like, oh man. But what Marchand brings in terms of even strength offense, power play, again, they try to limit how much PK, work he gets with Bergeron just in terms of, preserving him. But you notice him when he's out there on the PK, a lot of times if there's a grade A chance going the other way, most likely it's a 2-on-1 with Bergeron and Marchand. everything else he brings, I mean, leadership, you look at every year, it's a recurring theme during dev camp, and that, Marchand's either there already working out, or the guys reference him as, a guy that they want to model their game after, just in terms of how competitive, how much he wants to improve every single year. I mean, Marchand even said after that San Jose game where he scores a goal, 28 seconds into the game, another dominant performance. He's like, yeah, I don't think I've been particularly good so far this year. I've been like tired after games. Like, I think I still have to work on a lot of stuff. It's like, all right, what's the next tier? And if there is, that's terrifying for the rest of the NHL and very good for the Bruins, because he's already right up there as being probably one of the most complete players in the league. And if he has another gear that he can hit, I mean, he really could put himself in the hot conversation. I mean, we've talked about the heart before, where he'd factor in, but if he plays at this level and he can get even better, I think he's going to be right in the mix, because few guys can excel in so many areas like he can.
Yeah, I mean, Dom Luszczyszyn at the Athletic already has Marchand as third in the projected NHL scoring race this year with projected 103 points, which would be 41 goals and 62 assists. Not bad, coming in behind McDavid and Draisaitl. I mean, I listed some names even that might be better than him or would be in that top 10 category. You know, if you're McDavid, your Draisaitl, your McKinnon, Ovechkin, probably Victor Hedman in there, Sidney Crosby,
Matthews.
maybe Matthews, maybe Patrick Kane. I mean, he is pretty effective. I know the Blackhawks blow right now. That team is awful.
I got to say, who could have seen this coming, that instead of rebuilding like a normal team, ripping up the game plan and then just signing veterans and hoping to fast forward through was going to spectacularly implode on this team. It's shocking to see, really, right? We couldn't have seen that happen.
No, not at all.
No.
And I feel bad for a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury, who went from a great situation in Vegas to hearing that he got traded on Twitter
circus act.
to a circus act. Yeah, I mean, just terrible, terrible team. That team is awful. I'm very curious to see how they. I mean, they have not led yet this year. You know how wild that is? What are they? 5 games into the seasons? 4 or 5?
6?
5 or 6 even, and they have not led a game. You haven't even scored the first goal. You haven't been up 1-0, 2-1. That's that is incredible. Like I didn't realize that stat, but when I first saw that, I was just, I've never heard of a team going 6 games without like leading like that, especially a team like that.
Yeah,
It's incredible. I can't wait. I'm interested to see how they deal with that. Does Colliton get fired?
I imagine
don't
like
know
most
what
things
you do.
they've done after riding the coattails of that franchise, they will probably bungle it and fuck it up like they have done for traditionally the last 50 plus years of their existence. So
Yeah, what would lead you to say that?
Hmm.
But I do think there's only a handful of guys who would vie for top 5 consideration. I think Marchand's right there. I think you could argue he's easily top 5, or not easily, but
I
argue
also
that he's in the
think
4 or 5 range.
I also think if like you miss him for an extended stretch, I mean, there's like McAvoy, obviously, like for the defense, it's like, oh, but as much as, let's say like Bergeron misses 2 weeks, like, all right, like center depth's already in rough shape, like they're gonna clearly miss him. But like if Marchand like missed like a month, I mean, he's literally, even just offensively, is like almost like the get out of jail free card, right? Where like you could be sluggish all game, and all of a sudden out of nowhere he makes something happen. Like, that's just how dynamic he is, how assertive he is with the puck. You just get results in whatever role he's playing in. He's effective at it. So if you like missed him for a month, it would, I think, be a brutal hit for this team. That just shows his importance for this team, but just across the league, like few guys have that amount of impact on one game.
He's the most irreplaceable
Yeah.
member of that offense, and you could say team even. I mean, I don't know how you can't replace a Brad Marchand. I mean, even Taylor Hall last year was saying, I look up to a guy like Brad Marchand, the way he plays, and it always interests me that if you look back to when they were both entering the league, they could not have been more opposite players, right? Brad Marchand was a fourth liner. We've talked about this before, but a fourth liner, kind of a grinder type, scrappy player. Taylor Hall was, as he is kind of now, skilled, top tier offensive left winger, certainly top 3 or a top line player back then. And it's changed so much, at least on Marchand's end in the past 10, 11 years. So very interesting to see that. But yeah, I think top 5 is not crazy. I don't think that's like, oh, what? And I think it's funny because I don't know if the rest of the league realizes this. I don't know if they understand how good he's become and how good he's been for a while now. This is not like 1 or 2 good seasons. This has been like getting better every single year, and he's been elite now for 4 or 5 years, which leads me to my next point. This is why you have to compete. This is why you have to do what you said and going out and getting Tomas Hurdle at the deadline. This is why you have to get defensemen to bolster that back end, because Marchand's prime, and we were saying this, I remember back when they lost to the Islanders, Marchand's prime is not lasting forever here. And he's a
No.
smaller guy. So you do wonder, you can't waste these years. You cannot waste these years. And it just goes back to, again, you have a top 5 player in the league. You have to compete.
Mhm.
And it's even more dire. I mean, granted, Marchand has a cup, but it's even a little more dire than Draisaitl and McDavid with Edmonton because they're younger.
Yeah.
They're those are younger guys. Marchand is not. Marchand's what? Is he 31 or 2?
33, right?
33.
Yeah.
My bad. Unhonored
I
Zdeno
think
Chara. Good for him. You're probably
33.
right. 33. He's 33 years old. So definitely have to watch out for that. The Bruins offensive game on Sunday. 3 goals, right? Pretty much right off the bat. But then later in the game, they give up some goals. They almost lost it. There was there was a real chance there at the end. It was James Reimer's revenge that they were
Mm.
gonna, lose that game in the third period after being up 4-1. Now I ask you, what is more encouraging or concerning? Are you more encouraged by the offensive fast start and their ability to, well, not ability to hold the lead, but ability to not completely implode? Or are you more concerned by the fact that they almost did implode?
I think I'm more encouraged by I focus more on the positives in a game like that. And even after the game, someone asked Bruce Cassidy a question like, what do you kind of chart out as being, how the game kind of unraveled there? And Cassidy kind of more or less pushed back of like, he didn't think they unraveled. It was two tips, two deflections that even the best goalie is usually not going to catch. I mean, like just bad breaks their way. It wasn't like, you know, obviously they pushed a little bit there after I think it was Hurdle had the first goal. Pushed a little bit, then leads to the second goal.
Against his future
Yes,
team.
a lot of foreshadowing there. But even like I remember, maybe I was bad luck, but right before Hurdle scored that goal, I looked at like just like the shot metrics and stuff, and obviously the Bruins start off really strong in that game. San Jose pushes back a little bit at the end of the first, but after that, like the second period through about midway through the third period, they weren't getting anything. Like I think they were at like 16 shots on goal with like about 8 minutes to go, and then they get that little push. So uh, I focus more, I think, on the positives of a game like that. Of yeah, it's unfortunate that what looked like kind of a blowout or a snooze fest on a Sunday ended up being kind of the pressure ramped up there at the end where you had to protect a 1 goal lead late. But from the Bruins perspective, I don't think they're going to be looking at the film afterwards and be like, oh, what happened? Like on like how many fires we had to put out on defense to correct that. It was guys in front, tips, deflections. Like again, that's somewhat part of the game. So I'm not hitting the panic button over a game like that. Again, it's San Jose, and even though they were 4-0 entering it, they're still not going to be that good, right? Like I don't think Aiden Hill's going to. I think he entered the game with like a 9.6 save percentage. Of course, they bounced him out in the second period. So, but I think you look at some of the other positive things. Obviously, the first line, great as expected. We'll see what happens with like the second line of how they kind of revamp that. I mean, Nosek was good in that Buffalo game as a second line center. Not what you planned for him to be entering the year, but in terms of being a guy that can play up in the lineup, he has value there. I think I wrote something over the weekend about just early impressions from the start of the year, and I said that Nosek has been arguably like their most impressive UFA pickup so far, at least in terms of like he can be very good in the fourth line or in a pinch can do well. But whether it be that, Fulbert, I think had a better game. He's been so to start the year, but I think a game like that, especially where it got tight at the end, you kind of saw his value. Not flashy, but brings value in that role of just kind of planting him down low, protecting the net. And then DeBrusk gets on the board, which I think, even though that third line struggled a little bit as of late, and again, you don't have Foligno, you don't have Smith right now, but just having him bury those grade A chances when they're there has to do, I think, wonders for his confidence. So I think, of course, you'd rather it be a 4-1 walkthrough on a Sunday against a team like that. But I think you look at the pros and cons, the positives, negatives. There's still a lot of positives to draw from a game like that, all across the board.
Yeah, I wasn't super concerned with the comeback because they were, again, you said they were tip-ins. These
Yeah,
were not like,
it wasn't
clean
like it wasn't a
chances.
Flyers game, like
Oh no.
grade A's or anything like that.
No, it wasn't like they were just turning the puck over consistently and leading to this. It was just tip-ins, and that stuff, weirdly to say, happens. So yeah, I was way more encouraged by, again, offense looked great. And you mentioned the missing certain guys. You're missing right now Nick Foligno. Craig Smith was out on Friday and Sunday, correct? Craig Smith was out both
He
days.
played on Friday and was bad. Like I think it was something that he started on the second line, got bumped down, and like still, I think the stat was he was on the
24
ice
to
for
1.
27 to 2. 27
Oh,
to 2
geez.
shot attempts for Buffalo when he was on the ice in like 10 minutes, which is like
Yeah.
I had to like refresh natural stat trick like 10 times to be like, is there a glitch? But yeah, Buffalo had a 27 to 2 edge in shot attempts when Smith was on the ice. So
Yeah.
clearly not at 100%.
Yeah, you sent that to me and Ty, and you're like, "Is this right?
Yeah, like
Is this correct?" And I mean, yeah. So again, you're missing those two, but on the bright side, you are getting production from places. Again, Nosek is a guy who's been very versatile on your second line, and could be on the fourth line as well. Jake DeBrusk producing. Like I think that's one of the things that
huge.
we talked about this last week. That's huge. That's huge. And again, it goes back to my thing at the beginning of the year. I'm gonna hammer this home to get people to think, you know what? Maybe sometimes Evan can be right with his predictions. Your depth scoring is going to carry you. That's what's going to carry you. And if your depth scoring is there, you're going to win. You're gonna do well, and that's sort of what's happened thus far. Again, Jake DeBrusk gets on the board. It's 2 goals in 4 games. Was it? He didn't have last year. It took him 18 games to get to
It's
2
something
goals.
like that. Yeah, it was
Yeah, it
a
was 1
huge
goal in the
gap.
first 17 games. Yeah,
and and it
ridiculous.
and it's just encouraging for him too because I thought he had that really strong start against Dallas, and then two kind of the lackluster games that you watch from DeBrusque were like, all right, didn't really notice him that much. Like, let's hope like this isn't a trend. And again, I think he's still gonna go through those kind of peaks and valleys at times, but to have him snap back with a goal and a pretty engaged performance, just after a 2-game lull, it's encouraging. Even if he's still kind of a hot and cold player, if the gaps are 2 games, 3 games where he's in between goals, as opposed to goal, 10 days, 10 games, like you'd rather have it much like you narrowing that level of inconsistency, which I think is going to be key for him because, as we said, if he just gets you 15, 20 goals, 40 points out of the third line, it's exactly what you need. Which right now he's on pace for hitting around that level if he stays at this. If he's this engaged and he's that aggressive going to the net.
He's on pace for what, 40 goals right now?
I think so. So he's kind of overachieving a little bit, which I think the Bruins
Yeah.
will also take.
Yeah, I think he's underachieving actually. If he doesn't 40 goals, I think it's time
That
to
is
just
true.
trade him for mega
Words
pucks.
are
Yeah,
hot.
get out of here. Get out of here. But yeah, no, people have been stepping up big with the injury bug. All right, so Jack Studnicka got called up Sunday. It was Jack Studnicka day in Boston against the Sharks. And he entered in on the fourth line. Didn't really play a ton. Played only about 9 minutes of 5-on-5 time. Not a ton elsewhere. You didn't see a ton of them. Wasn't noticeable. I mean, again, he was playing with Carson Coleman and Trent Frederick. Um, I think there's a few takeaways from this. My first thought was why he didn't play with Coyle and Hall. I didn't really understand that. Why I get Nosek had a good game against the Sabres on the second line, but Stanika is potentially a top 6 forward of the future for you. Why would you not against the San Jose Sharks in Game 4 of the season? Why wouldn't you just try him out between Coyle and Hall? Cassie did not speak on that, did he?
He more or less just focused on his overall game and said he wasn't really noticeable, which I mean, it's tough to get noticed when you're on the fourth line. And again, we've talked about it before of mapping out maybe he starts on the fourth line, builds his way up. Well, it's tough to get off of that fourth line when only 20% of your faceoffs are in the offensive zone. Like they weren't just like, put them together on the fourth line. It was grind out shifts like against top 6 competition. Like you're really not going to shine in a spot like that where you've got where you're a young player like Studnicka. Like it, and it's just I think the fact that sure he can start on the fourth line, he can take those tough shifts, and he has value. If you want to put him on the PK, what have you. There wasn't one point where like he got swapped with Nosek at all. Which, if you're gonna see what this guy has, like what better opportunity? It wasn't like Coyle was, dicing up the competition at 2C, where it's like, all right, well our hands are tied here. Like we can't move Coyle. He was literally on the wing, and again, Nosek had a good game against Buffalo, but you have to look in the long. Let's do the long term look ahead. Is Tomas Nosek going to be your second line center in like a year from now, 2 years? Is Jack Studnicka potentially going to be? He could, but you're not going to know if he's going to be buried on the fourth line in a role like that too. It's not. There's been plenty of teams that their fourth line functions as more of almost like a, they still get 50% ozone reps. Like they're not like just a pure shutdown line. Studnicka was, again, more or less fed to the wolves in terms of how they were, matched up against San Jose. So, yeah, it's a tough break for him. I mean, I don't think he was super engaged, but also wasn't playing to any of his strengths at all. It doesn't seem like it helps anyone long term, short term, anything like that, because the Bruins don't really know what they have in Studnicka still, even though there was a 2C spot that was available in that game. Studnicka probably is going back down to Providence, not that confident. Like, all right, I played 9 minutes of hockey, didn't really impact the game that much. And you know what? Doug Wilson, the GM of the Sharks, probably watched that game and was like, "They're calling me about this kid? Really? Okay. Well, last time I checked, Thomas Hurdle's still going to be probably the top trade target. And I think a lot of teams would give up a lot for him. I didn't watch that game and think that, I'm going to get pitched on Studnicka being the key piece in the return. So it's just an overall, like, just, I don't want to say mind-boggling, but just like a frustrating way of how what seemed like a pretty easy opportunity for him to get those reps, and it didn't fall his way at all.
It's another example of them just really not using Studnicka right. Again, you're not like how many years now we've been saying, what do you have in Studnicka? Because they don't use him properly. It's been going on
It's
forever. The only time he ever came close to having like a chance was the beginning of last season, and then that just dissipated. That's been
and,
it.
and you would think they'd rather just get like, if let's say maybe he's just, it doesn't work, like he doesn't fit on this roster and what have you, and he doesn't hit that potential. Wouldn't you rather know now? It's almost like Peter Solaric is ripping up the KHL. Peter Solaric put up great numbers in Providence, wasn't cut for the NHL, right? At least in this Bruin system. You know what? They put him with David Krejci for an extended stretch, and it didn't work out. But you know what? You found out by doing that, right? Like you penciled him in for a while and see if he fit, and it didn't happen. Like you're not even assessing Studnicka through that same lens of like putting him in a spot where he could potentially thrive. And maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but at the very least, you have your answer, right? When you have the game like this where Studnicka's on the fourth line, do you get a definite look at like how he could fare at the NHL? Not really, especially if he's only playing 9 minutes a night. So
Yeah.
it's a tough, I think, situation for everyone, but especially Studnicka, who, again, it's all about confidence. Like I don't know how you leave a game like that being like, all right, well, that down Providence got to build off of that game. It's like, all right, did I do enough? I don't think they liked what happened. Like it's a tough situation.
I'm almost sure that Carson Kuhlman has gotten more reps in the top six over the past
Oh
3 years
yeah,
than Jack Studnicka has. And again, like I get it. There's more spots on the wings, and you haven't been as solid there. You have for the past few years, you've had David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron, but there's been opportunity, like an opportunity like Sunday is a legit opportunity to be like, hey, you're gonna play the second line between Taylor Hall and Charlie Coyle against the San Jose Sharks. Like that's a prime piece of real estate. That's a good test. That's a really good time to see. And they don't use it. They use it for Thomas Nosek. And it's just like, why? What's as you said, the long-term value of this is not very high. And again, it's just another example of Studnicka came up, filled in a spot, didn't play in anything that we'd ever really use him for, but we used him for it on Sunday, and then just probably going back down to Providence. So just I don't know. They continue to kind of misuse him. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And again, if they're not going to use him, then when are they going to use him as a second line center? I don't know. I mean, that was a perfect opportunity to do it. Whenever I saw the lineup come out, I was like, well, why would Studnicka not be the second line? Why is like I would understand if they kept Coyle there and put someone else on the right side,
right.
but I was like, well, you're putting Coyle on the wing. Why don't you put Studnicka down the middle? So who knows with that? I don't really know. If anything, Jack Studnicka could at least go and play and be a star for the Trashers. Have you seen that documentary?
No, I've not actually. I know a
Okay,
lot of people talking about it.
I just finally watched it Sunday night. And it was incredible. Highly recommend to anyone who hasn't watched it. Great documentary. I never knew about that stuff. Hilarious. Rarely will you find a documentary with that good of characters, with that good of a story. Like the most mockable people you could put together, the
Yes.
most mob boss kind of people were in that documentary. So if you haven't already seen it, go watch it. It's very fun, hilarious, and mind-boggling that actually like happened. That's minor league hockey, I guess. Anyways, around the league before we go, Nick Ritchie and the Maple Leafs
I
not
think maybe
working
just
out.
the Maple Leafs in general. Just
Yeah.
like, I think they got bigger problems than Nick Ritchie, which I think is more or less what Sheldon Keefe has talked about with that team. That team does not look very engaged, nor it's got to be frustrating for them too, because I don't think like this is an indictment on like the job that like Dubas and like the front office done. I think they've done a good job of like building a like talented team. Putting the guys in right places. You could make the argument that the Tavares signing was bad in terms of allocating that cap, like, but also you have to also it's like the Bruins. Like, are they top heavy? Yes, but you know what? You can rely on them to generate a fair amount of the points in the standings just based on their production alone. You're getting none of that from Toronto's big stars, which is at that point, what can you do? Right? Like you've got Austin Matthews, who everyone says is, what, a top 30 player in the league. Where's he been? What's Mitch Marner done? Like, Zach Hyman leaving shouldn't be the thing that undoes these lines that put up so much. And again, I think Zach Hyman's a very good player. I think he's underrated for what he does on those lines and complementing like these these star players. But um, the fact that you're just getting nothing from any of these star players for Toronto, it's very concerning because I think you've got all these other guys that, Kosh, if he stays healthy, could be a really valuable piece. I love that Michael Bunting signing, which looks like he's playing well. When Michael Bunting's playing better than your like guys who are, counting over half of your cap space, very concerning. So that team, especially getting beat by the Penguins, who are like the most balanced team of all time right now. They have like no one in their lineup, and all of them are scoring goals. Dan Hyland's got like 5 points in 5 games.
Yep.
Evan Rodriguez is the first line center, like playing well. Which I did. I thought this was the year that the dam finally burst with Pittsburgh, and they missed the playoffs. But right now, looks like they're playing pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the stats right now. Mitch Marner, one assist in 6 games.
6 games.
Austin Matthews, 0 points in 3 games. I mean, you can go down the list. Their top 3 leading scorers right now are William Nylander with 5, Jason Spezza with 4, and Wayne Simmons with 3. So there you go.
Yikes.
That's why your team is failing. And Nick Ritchie, who a reporter called him like lazy or something, and Sheldon Keefe was like, "No, not saying that." And it was like, you benched him, and he does look lazy out there. So yeah, the Nick Ritchie experiment up in Toronto, not exactly going according to plan. It's funny because Nick Ritchie had a great preseason.
He did,
if I remember right. Nick Ritchie had a bunch of goals. So who ever seen that coming? I mean, credit to Sweeney, by the way, for not offering Nick Ritchie a qualifying deal, and same with Kanakasha. Like, both were going to be kind of just sitting on your
or it would have been just question
payroll.
marks. Because I mean, and again, I'm a Andre Kasha fan, but it's unfortunate. But you just can't pencil him in with that injury risk, which is really unfortunate because I think it's really sidetracked a very talented player. But from just the pure X's and O's roster construction, you couldn't go into a year expecting, the third line, like, well, we've got Kasha again. You just can't do it, right? Like it's really unfortunate, but that's the way it is.
And Nick Ritchie too. I mean, you knew like what you had in that. It was just
Yes.
not enough. It just wasn't going to get you over the top. And I do agree with Sweeney in that going out and getting Hala and Foligno and Nosek is much better than having like Nick Ritchie down there eating up almost $3 million on that third or fourth line left wing. Just allocating money better. Anyways, before we go, Connor, what can the people look forward to over at BSJ?
Yeah, we'll be breaking down a few more question marks over the roster, how guys have fared in new roles, whether it be Nosek or even the fact that I think the D-Corps has been a lot more fluid than we thought in terms of, the fact that it's pretty much just been McAvoy and Grizzly for a long stretch here. It really hasn't been as much McAvoy forward as we've expected. So we'll look at a few roster battles or decisions Cassie's made in the early going preview, which should be a pretty interesting week ahead. I mean, you've got matchups against Carolina and Florida, who look like the top dog in the Atlantic so far. So 2 games against them in under a week will be an early statement for the Bruins if they're able to get some points against them. So we'll break all that down over at BSJ. So subscribe to BostonSportsJournal.com. Want to follow me on Twitter? You can do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that for CLNS Media. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Be listeners, have a great rest every week.